So, why is this happening? This was a good game without disclosing any sensitive data. I'll say it was a healthy game. Like, it had good, there's publicly available data people can see in Sensor Tower. Like, the game generated over $20 million in revenue, had over 10 million players. Like, the game is no slouch. So why would a game that had a ton of players, produced a non-trivial amount of revenue, and generally positive reviews and beloved by players with, world's biggest IP, why would this game be getting canceled? It was a really bad week to take a week off from the news episodes last week, and there was a bunch of scary stories that came out in the industry. I think because it was the Friday the 13th week. I don't know. It's Halloween officially in New Jersey already because it's September and we started early out here. For whatever reason, all the bad news seemed to hit the industry last week, so we just did a roundup of 3 stories that we thought were notable for different segments of the industry. We'll go through 3 bad news stories of the last week. We're going to start with what I think is the smallest, have a medium-sized but important one, and then end on what is the most significant.
Wow, I can't wait to know what the most significant one is.
You'll never believe number 3. Up top, the drama-filled plight of the game Dead Drop by the publisher Midnight Society. If that name is not ringing a bell, better known as Dr. Disrespect's crypto game. So what's going on? So they had significant layoffs for Midnight Society. I'll read a couple of pull quotes here. Midnight Society is undergoing significant layoffs as it works to release its debut game, Dead Drop, an NFT-based extraction shooter. Midnight Society remains committed to launching Dead Drop in 2025 despite difficulties. And here's a quote from them. Unfortunately, Midnight Society has faced multiple unexpected changes in recent months. To adapt to these changes and secure the future of Midnight Society, Dead Drop, and our commitment to providing innovative gaming experiences, we've made the tough decision to streamline our operations, which includes a significant workplace reduction. So, Midnight Society, who is the team behind it? Who are the founders? Well, this is interesting because it depends on who you ask and when you ask. So when it was originally announced, the co-founders were said to be Guy Beam, Robert Bowling, who worked on the Call of Duty franchise, and Quinn Del Hoyo, who worked on Gears of War and Halo, as well as art director Darren Bacon, who worked on Destiny and Halo. So strong team of names in traditional gaming. What's been interesting to see is, unless you live under a rock, you will have heard about some other controversy that Dr. Disrespect was in this year, which for obvious reasons, we probably won't go into deep detail on this podcast, but let's just say it was no bueno. But when those things happened, the rest of the Midnight Society team basically said that, Dr. Disrespect was not a co-founder, not a significant part of the team. I'm paraphrasing here, but they really distanced themselves and treated him as more like an ambassador or a figurehead. So they really pivoted away from him being like a core part of the team and positioned that he was never a significant contributor, to paraphrase. So I think it's been really hard for them. The game wasn't doing well anyway. Unfortunately, the crowd that's really into extraction shooters and kind of core gaming is really allergic to anything, at least presently, that rhymes with NFTs and crypto. And it didn't help that the gameplay reviews were very middling at best. So it was not looking great for the project, and that was while the best thing it had going for it arguably was the tie-in with Dr. Disrespect.
Right. So
I think it's going to be very hard for them to find their footing with him no longer part of it. And we've talked a lot the last couple months about how there's certain genres that we're just really oversaturated with. We talk a lot about hero shooters is one the industry is just getting way too much of and people burn out. I would definitely add extraction shooters to that list as well. If you're an extraction shooter and you don't have something really plus to add, and no, crypto does not count as that, as much as I love Web3 stuff, it's going to be really hard to find a space in this market.
Yeah, I knew very little about this. I knew Dr. Disrespect, big brand, had a game, heard it had some NFT components. I think this falls into you have to make a really good game before you worry about the NFT component section, and you're playing in one of the most competitive spaces. And unless you're going to beat Fortnite, good luck.
Yep. Moving on from the PC gaming space to mobile, and our second scary story, bad news story of the week. This one is a little close to home. Game publisher Kabam has shut down Disney Mirrorverse after 2.5 years. Why is this one close to home? We helped launch this game. We partnered with Kabam. We worked on it for the launch year. It had a huge year, reached number 1 on both iOS and Android. It's a really good game. It's one of the few mobile games that was, I think, really embraced and spoken positively to in the general gaming segment. So a couple nuggets on this one. So Kabam is shutting down Disney Mirrorverse on December 16th this year. The game has already been removed from Android and iOS stores. though no specific reason was provided. Players who have the game can play until the end date, including access to the upcoming final content. The game peaked with spending in mid to late 2022, but has been in gradual decline from a revenue standpoint since then. Yeah, and just one note, like Kabam Star Wars Uprising was discontinued in 2016 due to sustainability issues, and Kabam's kind of longest flagship game, Marvel Contest of Champions, remains active and will celebrate its 10th anniversary in December.
That's wild.
Yes, that one has been a beast. So, why is this happening? This was a good game without disclosing any sensitive data. I'll say it was a healthy game. Like it had good, there's publicly available data people can see in Sensor Tower. Like the game generated over $20 million in revenue, had over 10 million players. Like the game is no slouch. So why would a game that had a ton of players, produced a non-trivial amount of revenue, and generally positive reviews and beloved by players with, world's biggest IP, why would this game be getting canceled? I have my own thesis, 2 reasons, maybe 2.5. The first is just live service games. Like live service games are very expensive to operate, and that's kind of like what Kabam got known for, is being masters of live service. These games have to be above a certain scale to merit their own existence. And that kind of ties to my second reason, which is the double-edged sword of massive IPs. We've talked about this before. IPs are a double-edged sword. They increase your conversion rate, they increase your organic user base, but the structures of IP deals are very heads I win, tails you lose for the IP holder. You are going to have to pay them no matter what. Like if the game is successful, if the game fails, the risk is not shared. So similar to bullet number 1, the cost of a AAA IP, such as Disney, using like their entire franchise essentially. I don't know the specific terms around this, but like if it's in line with other AAA IPs, I've worked on other Disney IP games that I did know the terms for. They were not great for us as publisher or developer. This is my past jobs, like pre-Uptick. So it puts another immense burden on the profitability of the game. So I think these are reasons 1 and 2. It's like, even if the game is great, there is such a burden for the cost of operations and the cost of the IP. The game has to be like insanely high monetizing.
Right.
And then the third reason, which is a little more like, businessy, is that it's just been like a rough couple of years for Kabam. I think ever since the Netmarble acquisition, there's been a ton of thrash and turnover, changes in leadership, changes in direction, changes in personnel. A lot of our friends there came and went over the last couple of years. So I think all of that internal turmoil and kind of changes in vision and prioritization from leadership probably didn't do the game any favors, but it is a sad one to see go. It's rare that there's a game that is like this much positive feedback in the mobile industry and hits these kind of numbers, but is still canceled this relatively early in its lifetime.
I don't know. I worked on this launch a little bit, not a ton. We've talked about it in the past. It was like a very, very large, very, very successful launch. I don't have any particular insight here other than talking to people on the inside who have since left, and it seemed like they've been slimming down the operation there for quite some time. Clearly Kabam's consolidating into where they see profitability centers, and for whatever combination of reasons, I think licensing is obviously a very large part of it. They were not able to run this profitably. It's a bit of a bummer, but yeah, makes sense.
All right, so moving on to our third scary game industry story of the week, and probably the biggest one as far as like the impact and scale of this, which was we had a notable round of layoffs at Activision Blizzard.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
In disclosure, Uptick does business with parts of Activision Blizzard, and it's really sad to see, the impact, but it's probably the next shoe to drop in the merger with Microsoft, in the kind of consolidation of those resources. So a little bit more detail about this. Microsoft Gaming has announced a new round of layoffs affecting about 650 employees, which is 3% of its global workforce. The layoffs follow Microsoft's $69 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard in 2023. The cuts will primarily impact corporate and supporting roles, with teams like Call of Duty Warzone Mobile and Warcraft Rumble experiencing reductions, the goal being to align teams for long-term success and minimize disruptions. And then the quote from Phil Spencer, Microsoft's gaming CEO. Phil said, "With these changes, our corporate and supporting teams and resources are aligned for sustainable future growth and can better support our studio teams and business and units with programs and resources that can scale to meet their needs." Sounds a lot like the announcement we read in the other layoffs earlier. Anyway, so this layoffs, it's not the first layoffs. So we had a larger round in January of 2023 that affected 1,900 employees, and another round in May 2023. And these are part of like a broader trend we're just seeing across the industry of just downsizing in teams, especially in following mergers and acquisitions. So there are no, I guess the semi-silver lining, there's no specific games that are canceled that are known of related to this, but always sad to see friends in the industry impacted by these large layoffs.
I mean, this is clearly a function of the consolidation that's happening after the M&A. Bright side to this is they're laying off support in corporate roles. It's not a bright side, but what it sounds like is the people doing the core development and the core design work and the core art are not the people who get affected. I don't have any insight, but that's what the corporate speak that came down was talking about. So, I mean, this is very, very expected. I mean, Microsoft has been trying to right-size this game business for quite some time now. They are trying to innovate across a bunch of different segments. They're dealing with Xbox, they're dealing with Game Pass, they're dealing with being a massive publisher now. And so I think this makes sense. I'm personally liked Warcraft Rumble quite a bit. I actually played it a lot.
Same.
And I got my friends to play it.
It's a good game.
So hopefully that it stays not dead, because I would go back and play it from time to time, and that's a place that I'd like to continue to be able to play. So no deep insight other than I think this is kind of more, it indicates the times we're in, and this is what happens after M&A, and that's what you should expect.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds crass, but it strikes me mostly as business as usual following a large merger like this, which is really unprecedented in the gaming industry. And for me personally, it doesn't diminish any of my bullishness on Microsoft's ability to really completely own large segments of the game industry, but nonetheless, unfortunate news.
So it's not great times, but I think this is part of the growing pains. And I think the upside to all this is, like, while it's hard and thrashy right now, we've looked at some graphs in the past just talking about the amount of investment that's going into games. And the upside of downsizing these teams at large companies is that you have a lot of free agents in the ecosystem, which is a really great time to start new companies and really superpower companies that are growing. So I think that's the flip side, is that usually when you see these large rounds of layoffs, you see new teams stepping up and taking place. And hopefully, as we talk about our next topic, as the cost of borrowing money goes down, it becomes easier to start new businesses.
We have been putting together some content that we would like to share with everyone next week, and it is called the Lean Growth Webinar. So what is the Lean Growth Webinar? It's been like a tumultuous couple of years for the game industry. Been a lot of budget cuts, layoffs, lots of bad news in the industry in general. And so it's just meaning teams have to do more with less. They have smaller teams, smaller budgets, less tools and software that they're able to license to do their jobs. So we want to do something really focused on how can teams be really efficient and lean? What are the pieces of technology and sort of like the team structure and philosophies you can take to make a really lean and efficient growth team. So join us for the Lean Growth Webinar. That is next Wednesday, September 25th.
10 a.m. PST. You can register in the description.